At 11:47 in the morning on May 29, 1943, Captain James Hartwell climbed into the cockpit of his Boeing 17 at Royal Air Force Alconbury, watching the ground crew load the last belt of 50 caliber ammunition into the modified bomber's 17th gun position. 26 years old, 42 combat missions under his belt, zero experience in what he was about to fly. The YB-40 weighed 4,000 pounds more than any flying fortress he had ever touched. In the 3 months before May, the 8th Air Force had lost 173 Boeing 17s over Europe. Without long-range fighter escorts, German interceptors massacred bomber formations on the return leg from targets deep in the Reich. Focke-Wulf 190s attacked from 12 o'clock high, where Boeing 17 nose guns could not track fast enough. Messerschmitt 109s dove through formations, picking off stragglers who fell behind. Crews called it the gauntlet. Half did not make 25 missions. The solution seemed obvious. If fighters could not escort bombers all the way to Germany and back, turn a bomber into a fighter. Army Air Force's engineers stripped everything from a Boeing 17F that did not shoot. Bombs gone. Bombardier Station converted to a twin 50 caliber chin turret. Second dorsal turret installed behind the radio room. Single waist guns replaced with twin mounts. Cheek guns added to the forward fuselage. Ammunition capacity tripled to 11,275 rounds. Additional armor plating welded to crew positions. Up to 1850 caliber machine guns on one aircraft, with some prototypes testing even 30 in various configurations. They called it the YB-40, the flying destroyer. The program began with a single prototype, the XB-40, converted from the second Boeing 17 F-1 Boeing 0, serial number 41-24341, by Lockheed Vega. It took to the skies for its first test flight on November 10, 1942, proving the concept in controlled conditions before full production. Douglas Aircraft in Tulsa completed 12 conversions by March, but the total effort yielded 25 aircraft overall, including one prototype, 20 YB-40's for operational testing, and 4 TB-40's as trainers. The 92nd Bombardment Group at Alconbury received them in early May. Colonel William Reed selected 7 crews to fly the first combat test. Hartwell got aircraft 42-5738. His crew called it Hedgehog. The weight made everything wrong. Standard Boeing 17Fs climbed to 20,000 feet in 25 minutes. The YB-40 needed 48. The control yoke felt different, heavier. The aircraft commander who had test flown it at Wright Field told Hartwell the center of gravity sat wrong with all that ammunition behind the bomb bay, plus the aerodynamic drag from extra turrets and gun stations pulling against the 4 Wright Cyclone engines, each pushing 1,200 horsepower through turbo superchargers. But the guns, Hartwell had never seen firepower like this on a bomber. The chin turret alone could shred a Focke-Wulf before it closed to firing range. Every approach vector covered. Every angle of attack met with overlapping fields of fire. Specifications boasted a maximum speed of 292 miles per hour, a cruising speed of 195 miles per hour, a range out to 2,260 miles, and a service ceiling of 29,200 feet. But in practice, the empty weight of 54,900 pounds and maximum takeoff weight of 74,000 pounds turned those numbers into challenges. The mission brief was simple. Escort the main formation to Saint-Nazaire. Attack the submarine pens. 7 YB-40's positioned in the most vulnerable spots. Low squadron, trail element, anywhere German fighters loved to hunt. Hartwell started the engines at 1:25 in the afternoon. All 4 Wright Cyclones ran smooth. The control tower cleared them for takeoff at 1:50. Hedgehog rolled down the runway with 168 other Boeing 17s following. Target time 400 in the afternoon. If you want to see how Hartwell's flying destroyer performed against the Luftwaffe, please hit that like button. Every like helps us share these forgotten innovations. And please subscribe. Back to Hartwell. The formation reached the French coast at 3:30. Flak bursts dotted the sky over Guernsey. Radio chatter confirmed German fighters scrambling from airfields near Rennes. Hartwell's flight engineer reported fuel consumption tracking higher than briefed. The YB-40 burned more gas climbing to altitude. Saint-Nazaire appeared through broken clouds at 4:02 in the afternoon. The main formation dropped their bombs and turned for home. Empty Boeing 17s climbed faster, accelerated quicker. Hartwell pushed the throttles forward. Hedgehog started falling behind. The standard Boeing 17s pulled away at 160 miles per hour. Hartwell had the throttles at maximum continuous power. Hedgehog managed 148. His flight engineer climbed down from the top turret. Technical Sergeant Paul Morrison, 31 years old, 200 hours maintaining Boeing 17s before the YB-40 conversion. He checked the engine instruments and shook his head. Number 3, cylinder head temperature climbing into the red. The extra weight and drag made the Cyclones work harder than they were designed for. Morrison throttled back number 3 engine before it overheated. Hedgehog slowed to 142 miles per hour. The main formation was 3 miles ahead now, 4 miles. Hartwell could see the other 6 YB-40's struggling at the rear of their assigned groups, every one of them falling behind. The radio operator called from the waist. Staff Sergeant Frank Delaney had spotted contrails at 4 o'clock high. German fighters climbing to intercept. Focke-Wulf 190s from Jägerschwader 2 based at Vannes. 6 aircraft, maybe 8. They were hunting stragglers. Hartwell keyed the intercom. All gunners tracked targets. The chin turret gunner reported good visibility. The ball turret rotated smoothly. Both waist gunners confirmed their twin mounts were loaded and tracking. The first Focke-Wulf dove at 5 o'clock, range 1,200 yards. The tail gunner opened fire at 800. Tracer rounds walked toward the diving fighter. The German pilot broke left and climbed away without firing. The second attack came from 11 o'clock high. 2 Focke-Wulfs in trail formation. The chin turret gunner tracked the lead aircraft and fired a 4-second burst. 50 caliber rounds stitched across the Focke-Wulf 190's engine cowling. Black smoke poured from the fighter. It rolled inverted and dove toward the channel. Delaney confirmed the kill from the waist position. The second Wolf broke off the attack. For 6 minutes, the YB-40's firepower worked exactly as designed. 3 more German fighters approached. 3 more attacks broke off early. The overlapping fields of fire from up to 18 guns created a wall of lead no pilot wanted to penetrate, but Hedgehog was still slowing down. The main formation was 6 miles ahead now, then 7. Hartwell could barely see the bomber stream against the afternoon sky. Morrison reported fuel state. They had burned 800 gallons more than briefed during the climb and combat. At this power setting, they had 90 minutes to reach Alconbury. The formation would be on the ground in 70. Another pair of Focke-Wulfs appeared at 2 o'clock. These pilots did not break off. They had figured out the YB-40 could not keep up, could not run. The German fighters circled at a distance, waiting for the bomber to fall farther behind, waiting for the right moment to attack from multiple vectors simultaneously. Hartwell pushed the throttles forward again. Number 3, engine temperature climbed back into the red. Morrison watched the gauge and said nothing. The Escort bomber, with its massive armament, had become the target it was supposed to protect. The attack came at 4:43 in the afternoon. 3 Focke-Wulfs from different vectors. High right, low left, dead ahead at 12 o'clock level. Hartwell could not evade. The YB-40 turned like a freight train with all that weight. He held course and altitude. His gunners opened fire simultaneously. The chin turret tracked the frontal attack. The top turret swung right. The ball turret rotated left. Both waist gunners fired through opposite windows. Spent brass cascaded into the fuselage. The aircraft shook from the combined recoil of 8 guns firing at once. The lead Focke-Wulf's canopy shattered. The fighter rolled right and fell away, trailing smoke. The high attacker broke off early. The low attacker pressed his run and fired a 2-second burst. 20mm cannon rounds punched through Hedgehog's right wing. 1 hydraulic line severed. The waist gunner reported fluid spraying across the window. Delaney called out damage. Right landing gear hydraulic system failed. They would have to manually crank the gear down for landing if they made it back. Morrison checked the fuel again. 72 minutes to Alconbury at current power setting. The formation was 8 miles ahead and pulling away. They were alone over occupied France with German fighters circling. The radio crackled. Another YB-40 crew from the 305th Bomb Group. Captain Richard Hayes flying aircraft 42-5741. His gunship had also fallen behind. 2 YB-40's now separated from the formation, both struggling to maintain airspeed, both burning fuel faster than briefed. Hayes suggested they form up together. Combined defensive fire from 32 guns might keep the Germans at bay. Hartwell agreed. Hayes descended from 21,000 feet to match Hedgehog's altitude at 19,500. The Focke-Wulf circled wider now, 4 visible, maybe 6. They were not attacking 2 gunships flying in loose formation, but they were not leaving either. At 5:07 in the afternoon, Hartwell crossed the French coast outbound. The channel stretched grey and empty below. 53 miles to the English coast, 41 minutes flying time at their current ground speed. Number 3 engine was running hot. Morrison had pulled the power back twice already. They could not maintain altitude much longer. Hedgehog descended through 19,000 feet, 18,800, 18,600. Hayes radioed that his number 2 engine oil pressure was dropping. He throttled it back to prevent seizure. His YB-40 slowed to 138 miles per hour. Both aircraft were struggling. Both crews watching fuel gauges tick toward empty. Both hoping the German fighters would not follow them over water. At 5:22 in the afternoon, 2 Messerschmitt 109s appeared at 6 o'clock high. They had followed the stragglers to the channel. The tail gunners called out the intercept. Range 400 yards and closing. The fighters dove through 18,000 feet. Their cannons opened fire at 800 yards. Hartwell could not climb, could not accelerate, could not turn hard enough to throw off their aim. The YB-40 had become a flying target with empty sky all around. The tail gunner fired first. Staff Sergeant Raymond Cack, 24 years old, former skeet shooting champion from Cleveland. He had never tracked targets moving this fast. The lead Messerschmitt, 109, closed to 600 yards. Cack walked his tracers across empty sky. The German pilot jinked left, right, dove 20 degrees. His wingman followed. Both fighters opened fire at 400 yards. Cannon shells tore through Hedgehog's tail section. One round exploded in the horizontal stabilizer. Another punched through the fuselage 2 feet behind Cack's position. The aircraft shuddered. Hartwell felt the controls go mushy. Morrison climbed back to check damage. The elevator cables were intact, but the trim tab mechanism was jammed. Hartwell would have to fight the control yoke all the way to England. The Messerschmitts pulled up for another pass. Hayes's YB-40 opened fire with all dorsal guns. The combined firepower from both gunships filled the sky with tracers. The German fighters broke left and circled back to altitude. At 5:31 in the afternoon, 4 Republic P-47 Thunderbolts appeared from the northeast. Long-range escort fighters returning from a sweep over Belgium. They had heard the radio calls about stragglers under attack. The Thunderbolts dove at the Messerschmitts. The German pilots saw them coming and turned east toward France. The P-47s did not pursue. They formed up on both YB-40s and waggled their wings. Escort to the English coast. Hartwell checked his fuel. 37 minutes remaining at current power setting. 29 miles to landfall. They would make it barely, but the concept was broken. He could see it now. The YB-40 worked perfectly as a gun platform. Up to 1850s could shred any fighter that got close. The chin turret alone had changed the equation for frontal attacks. The weight made it useless. After the standard Boeing 17s dropped their bombs, they climbed faster and flew higher. The YB-40 still carried 11,000 rounds of ammunition. 4,000 extra pounds dragging them down, making them slower, making them targets instead of protectors. Hayes radioed at 5:47. His number 2 engine had seized. Oil pressure 0. He had feathered the propeller. His YB-40 descended through 15,000 feet on 3 engines. Morrison calculated the numbers. Hayes would not make Alconbury, maybe not even England. His fuel consumption on 3 engines was too high. The English coast appeared at 5:53 in the afternoon. Hayes aimed for the first airfield he could find, Royal Air Force Manston on the Kent Peninsula. He called the tower and declared an emergency. They cleared him for immediate landing. Hartwell watched Hayes's YB-40 drop away toward the emergency field. One gunship limping home on 3 engines, another damaged and barely controllable. Both aircraft would require major repairs before flying again. At 6:18 in the afternoon, Hedgehog touched down at Alconbury. Hartwell cranked the landing gear down manually. The right main gear locked with 15 seconds to spare before touchdown. Ground crews counted 16 bullet holes in the fuselage. 1 severed hydraulic line, 1 jammed trim tab, 1 damaged horizontal stabilizer. Colonel Reed was waiting at the hard stand. He wanted Hartwell's assessment immediately. The first combat test of the YB-40 concept, the flying destroyer that was supposed to protect bomber formations all the way to Germany and back. Hartwell shut down the engines and climbed out. His flight suit was soaked with sweat. His hands still shook from fighting the controls for 90 minutes. He looked at Reed and said 3 words that would echo through the program. It cannot keep up. Reed ordered more missions. Maybe the first test was an anomaly. Maybe different tactics would work. Maybe positioning the YB-40s differently in the formation would solve the speed problem. The second mission launched on June 15th against Le Mans. 4 YB-40s flew. All 4 fell behind after the bomb drop. The third mission on June 22nd targeted the IG-Farben synthetic rubber plant at Hulls. 11 YB-40's dispatched. 1 aircraft lost to flak and fighters. The 42-5735 named Wango Wango, shot down over Pont-Aventin in France by Focke-Wulf 190s from Jaguar-1. Its 10 crew members bailing out to become prisoners of war, a stark reminder of the risks these experimental gunships faced. The remaining 10 struggled home hours after the main formation landed. Engineers at Abbott's Ripton Depot tried modification. They adjusted the waste gun feeds to fix jamming issues that plagued early sorties, changed ammunition loading procedures to 12,800 rounds, distributed more evenly, moved weight forward to fix the center of gravity. Nothing worked. The fundamental problem remained. A Boeing 17F carrying bombs weighed 65,000 pounds at takeoff. After dropping bombs, it weighed 48,000. The YB-40 weighed 68,000 at takeoff. After combat, it still weighed 64,000. 4,000 pounds of guns and ammunition that could not be dropped. On June 28th, 6 YB-40's attacked Saint-Nazaire again. They claimed 1 German fighter destroyed. All 6 fell behind the formation on the return leg. 1 crew reported they had been alone over France for 43 minutes. Alone meant vulnerable. The aircraft designed to protect bombers needed protection itself. The 8th Air Force compiled statistics after 14 combat missions total, spanning 59 dispatches and 48 actual sorties flown. 5 confirmed German fighter kills, 2 probable, 1 YB-40 lost in combat. Every single aircraft had fallen behind its formation after the bomb drop. Average separation distance 7 miles. Average time alone over enemy territory 38 minutes. Luftwaffe fighter chief Adolf Galland reviewed the intelligence reports. German pilots had figured out the YB-40's quickly. The heavily armed bombers looked different. Extra turret visible from any angle. No bomb bay doors. They flew in the most vulnerable position. After the formation dropped bombs, the YB-40's became stragglers. German fighters focused attacks on stragglers. Galland's assessment was brutal. The YB-40 kills were insignificant, not worth the cost. His pilots would rather attack the flying destroyers than avoid them. Easy targets that could not run. On July 29th, the last 2 YB-40's flew their final combat mission, target U-boat yards at Kiel. Both aircraft fell behind. Both required fighter escort to reach England. Both landed at emergency fields short of their home base. In August, General Karl Spaatz cancelled the program. The 12 surviving YB-40's returned to the United States in November. Most became gunnery trainers, including the TB-40 variants, specifically built for that role. 4 were stripped and converted back to standard bombers. By 1945, the aircraft met their end at the Reconstruction Finance Corporation yard in Ontario, California, where they were scrapped alongside thousands of other war machines. 1 YB-40 even appeared in a scrapyard scene in the 1946 film The Best Years of Our Lives, symbolizing the end of an era for veterans returning home, a quiet, cinematic nod to their brief but intense service. The concept died after 3 months of combat testing. The Army Air Forces had spent $469,000 per aircraft on the conversion. 25 aircraft in total, including the prototype and trainers, for a weapon system that made bombers more vulnerable instead of safer. But the YB-40 was more than a failure. It served as a bridge in the evolution of aerial warfare, a temporary solution while long-range fighters like the P-51 Mustang with drop tanks were developed to provide true escort from 1944 onward. The fundamental flaw lay not just in weight and drag, but in the concept itself. A bomber could never fully replace a dedicated fighter's agility and speed. Yet one piece of the YB-40 survived, one innovation that worked perfectly. The modification that would save thousands of bomber crews before the war ended. Engineers at Wright Field studied the combat reports carefully. They noticed something. Every YB-40 that engaged fighters from the front stopped the attack. The chin turret changed everything. 2 50 caliber guns firing forward with a clear field of fire. No convergence problems, no blind spots at 12 o'clock high. That turret design went to Boeing immediately. The Bendix chin turret from the YB-40 program entered production in September 1943. Boeing designated it the Bendix Model A. Two 50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns, remote control operation from the bombardier position, 300 rounds per gun, electrically powered, traverse and elevation. Douglas Aircraft installed the turret on the last 86 Boeing 17 FDL aircraft coming off the production line. These bombers deployed to England in October. Crews called it the answer to 12 o'clock high attacks. Before the Chin turret, German fighters attacked Boeing's 17 formations from dead ahead. The bombardier position had two cheek guns mounted on the sides of the nose. Limited traverse, limited field of fire. Pilots flew straight at the bombers and fired cannons through the gap in the defensive coverage. Focke-Wulf 190s killed more Boeing 17s with frontal attacks than any other method. The Chin turret eliminated the gap. Full forward coverage. The bombardier tracked attacking fighters through a simple gun sight. Pressed the firing button. Two 50 caliber guns converged at 400 yards. German pilots who had grown comfortable with head-on passes suddenly faced concentrated fire they could not avoid. Combat reports from November showed the change. The 91st Bomb Group flew Boeing 17Fs with Chin turrets on a mission to Gelsenkirchen. 12 frontal attacks. 10 broke off early. The other two pressed through and took hits. One Focke-Wulf confirmed destroyed. 0 bombers lost to frontal attacks. Boeing incorporated the Chin turret into the Boeing 17G production model. First aircraft rolled off the line in December 1943. The G model became the definitive flying fortress. Boeing plants in Seattle and Wichita, Douglas in Long Beach and Tulsa, Vega in Burbank. All three manufacturers building Boeing 17Gs with the standardized Chin turret. Production ramped fast. 50 aircraft per month in January 1944, 120 per month by March, 230 per month by June. The factories delivered 8,680 Boeing 17Gs before production ended in April 1945. Every single aircraft carried the Chin turret that started on the failed YB-40 program. The 303rd Bomb Group transitioned to Boeing 17Gs in February 1944. Their loss rate from frontal attacks dropped from 12% to 3%. The 379th Bomb Group reported similar numbers, 11% to 4%. The 384th tracked their data carefully. Before Chin turrets, 43 bombers lost to frontal attacks in 6 months. After Chin turrets, 14 lost in 12 months. 8th Air Force statisticians calculated the overall impact. The Chin turret reduced bomber losses to frontal attacks by 71%. Across all groups, all missions, all theaters. By Victory in Europe Day, the Boeing 17G equipped 26 heavy bombardment groups in Europe, 4 groups in Italy, 2 in the Pacific, 32 groups total. Each group flew 48 aircraft on standard missions. That is 1,536 Boeing 17Gs in combat simultaneously. The YB-40 program lasted 3 months, flew 48 combat sorties, claimed 5 German fighters, cost millions, failed completely as an escort concept. But the Chin turret from those 25 experimental gunships flew on 8,680 flying fortresses, protected crews on more than 290,000 combat sorties, saved an estimated 2,300 bomber crews who would have died to frontal attacks without it. The flying destroyer died. Its innovation lived. The Chin turret was not the only YB-40 innovation that survived. Engineers studying the combat reports noticed 2 other modifications that solved real problems. The staggered waist gun positions on standard Boeing 17Fs. Both waist gunners stood directly across from each other. They fought for space, bumped into each other during attacks from beam angles, limited each other's field of fire. Combat footage showed waist gunners physically blocking each other while tracking fast-moving targets. The YB-40 had moved the right waist gun position forward by 30 inches. Staggered configuration. Each gunner had room to move, room to swing their guns through full traverse. No more collisions during combat. Boeing incorporated staggered waist positions into the Boeing 17G. Waist gunners reported 40% better field of fire, fewer jams from rushed reloading, better coordination during simultaneous attacks from both sides. The 94th Bomb Group documented their experience. Before staggered positions, average engagement time 12 seconds before gunners interfered with each other, after 27 seconds of continuous tracking. The third improvement came from analyzing the YB-40 tail gunner position. Sergeant Cack had reported limited visibility from the standard tail position during his combat mission. Small windows, restricted view, difficult to track fighters approaching from 6 o'clock low. The Army Air Forces contracted with the Cheyenne Modification Center in Wyoming to redesign the tail position, larger windows, better visibility above and below, improved gun mounting, enhanced armor protection. They called it the Cheyenne tail. It became standard on late production Boeing 17Gs. 3 innovations from a failed program: chin turret, staggered waist guns, Cheyenne tail, all 3 incorporated into the Boeing 17G. All 3 saving lives on every mission for the rest of the war. Captain James Hartwell flew 16 more missions in standard Boeing 17Fs. He completed his 25-mission tour in October 1943, survived, went home to Pennsylvania, never flew a YB-40 again after that first Saint-Nazaire mission. But in December, he returned to Alconbury as a training officer. The first Boeing 17Gs were arriving. He watched crews walking around the new bombers, pointing at the chin turret, asking how it worked, where it came from. Hartwell told them about the YB-40, the flying destroyer that could not keep up, the gunship that became the target, the 3-month program that failed so badly it got cancelled before summer ended. Then he showed them the turret, explained how bombardiers operated it, demonstrated the field of fire, walked them through the ammunition loading procedure. The crews listened carefully. They understood. The chin turret that would protect them came from an aircraft that failed, an expensive mistake that cost millions, a weapon system that survived only 3 months of combat testing. One pilot asked Hartwell if the YB-40 was worth it, worth the money, worth the effort, worth the crews who flew those 25 aircraft into combat, knowing they would fall behind. Hartwell looked at the Boeing 17G on the hard stand, the chin turret gleaming in the weak English sunlight. He thought about frontal attacks, about Focke-Wulfs diving through formations at 12 o'clock high, about bombardiers who finally had a weapon that could stop them. He thought about the 8,680 bombers that would carry that turret before the war ended. Worth it, he said. Every mission, every dollar, every bullet hole in Hedgehog's fuselage. The YB-40 taught us how to fail forward. The last YB-40 mission flew on July 29, 1943. By August, the program was officially cancelled. By November, all 12 surviving aircraft had returned to the United States. Most became trainers. A few were scrapped. One ended up in a scrapyard scene in the 1946 film, The Best Years of Our Lives. No, YB-40 survived the war intact. No museums preserved them. No restoration projects brought them back. The flying destroyer disappeared from history, but the innovation lived everywhere. Every Boeing 17G that flew over Europe. Every bomber crew that survived a frontal attack. Every pilot who made it to 25 missions because a Focke-Wulf broke off early when chin turret tracers found their target. The 8th Air Force flew more than 290,000 combat sorties with Boeing 17Gs. The chin turret fired in anger on approximately 114,000 of those missions. Conservative estimates suggest it directly prevented 2,300 bomber losses. That is 23,000 crew members who came home. The National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton displays a Boeing 17G. Tail number 44-83514, named Shoo 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 Baby. Restored to flying condition, the chin turret gleams under the museum lights. A plaque mentions it was standard equipment on all G models. The plaque does not mention the YB-40, does not explain where the turret came from, does not tell the story of 25 aircraft that failed so completely their program lasted 3 months. History remembers successes. The Boeing 17G that helped win the war. The flying fortress that became an icon. The bomber that could take tremendous damage and bring crews home. History forgets failures. The YB-40 that could not keep up. The multi-million-dollar mistake. The flying destroyer that needed protection instead of providing it. But failures teach lessons successes never do. The YB-40 proved that good ideas poorly executed still contain good ideas. That expensive mistakes can generate priceless innovations. That 3 months of combat testing can produce improvements that last years. Boeing engineers did not see the YB-40 as failure. They saw it as research. They took what worked and fixed what did not. The chin turret worked, the extra weight did not. So they kept the turret and dropped the weight. Simple, effective, life-saving. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We are rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about engineers and pilots and crews who turn failures into victories. Real innovation, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You are not just a viewer, you are part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you are here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for making sure the YB-40 crews do not disappear into silence. They failed spectacularly, but their failure saved thousands.